All right. I'll talk, in this talk, I'll speak a little bit about the current problems with the web, the way that things are evolving, and what's happening to the whole ecosystem and communities. And finally, I'll try to finish off on why we need DarkFi and why it exists in the first place. So the current status of the web is that it's completely centralized, but many people don't realize this problem because we just take things for granted. The thing we have is like the monopoly of the big browser, which is basically done by Mozilla and Google these days. What we have is like a big choice of browsers, but the thing people don't see is that its development is centralized. So we have 2 web engines which are controlled by these companies, and that's the only thing developers are able to use. They don't have like a way to build software in a sovereign way. Another thing happening on the web is the CDNs, which are like content delivery networks, which people use to cache their websites and their data, put them in some distributed kind of server infrastructure, which is controlled by companies. And this helps you to make your websites available, but the problem is that it becomes like a man-in-the-middle attack because you're not in ownership of your files anymore. They are just hosted by these CDN companies. And another thing is the VPNs that everyone tells us we should use to protect ourselves, and that it will make us safe and protected on the internet against hackers and things. But this is just blatantly false because what you're doing is just tunneling your data to a big data center you know nothing about, and you don't know like the servers they're running. So they could be logging your traffic or like realizing where you're connecting from. And most of these data centers, under like government laws, government officials can come in and request all of this data, and they will happily comply. So in the DeFi space, we have Cloudflare, which is like giving us the CDNs, and like in the Ethereum space, the MetaMask wallet connects to Infura, and these kinds of things. Coming into crypto, I feel personally like that the Bitcoin grassroots movement has lost its way. Like back in 2012, we had like these developers who came together and just work on the software because it was something good, something that we liked, and there was no corporate influence. But with the growth of crypto, with mainstream adoption, what's happening now is, so we have all these Silicon Valley companies just trying to get in the space and make profit, and they don't care about users anymore. They just like come in and get out. And these developers are inexperienced. They have no one is teaching them how to do things properly because they're just like working in a corporate space, and they just like get pushed in. Yeah, work on DeFi now. That's like the new thing. Will get us much money. With this, like very little thought is given to decentralization. So as I mentioned, we have the CDNs and things. Like everyone just pushes their web apps there, and it exists in the cloud. So people are happy like with that. And as this is like becoming adopted in the mainstream, users just stop caring. They trade their convenience. They trade their sovereignty for convenience. It's just like useful. Oh, it works well. It works quick. It works in a browser. Or what everyone forgets, this is very centralized. So you have the choice of 2 browsers, and you have the choice of 1 single wallet for Ethereum and things like that. Like there are alternatives, but no one is pushing them. They're just using what's stable. Another thing happening in new DeFi projects is like the incorporation of closed source software. So it's like to protect your intellectual property and things, like people do it in a closed source way. What happens is hacks. So because of these inexperienced developers, they don't know how to build things get wrecked. So you can, on Wrecked News, you can every few days you will see a new DeFi hack happening in some space, whether it's a layer 2 or a layer 1, or a wallet, or a smart contract and things like that. So I did some research, and I made these slides a couple of weeks ago. I found like over 35 large DeFi hacks happened this year. And by large, I mean multiple millions of dollars getting stolen. The platforms it was stolen from include these four, which is centralized bridges owned by companies and corporations, proprietary wallets. Recently, like there was a big hype with the Solana blockchain, and 90% of the wallets on Solana are proprietary and closed source. Another thing is smart contracts, which also blockchains like Solana enable. So in Ethereum, at least, you can upload a smart contract, but at least you can read its source code or decompile it and things. But with the new evolution of programming, we use more featureful software, but it also enables people to keep them closed source, and you're not able to audit it as a user. The fourth one, which I mentioned here, is like man-in-the-middle attacks, and these mostly happen through infrastructure. So many of these web apps are built with JavaScript and Node.js, and it's just packages that get downloaded from the internet online, but it's enough to even make a typo in the package name, and you just get malware installed on your machine. And when this happens, also your users get this malware because they just download it from you. In a different way, there's also like centralization happening on GitHub. So there are ways that people do and introduce like attack vectors through this infrastructure things. You can read more about these hacks, like on Rex News. There are very good articles and explanations about it. To summarize these problems, I think like designs currently in software are very monolithic. More and more they're being built for surveillance and tracking people's behavior on the internet. And it's evolving like in complexities that young programmers are not able to understand. It's very hard for someone to jump in a huge code base and just realize what's going on. Where I think it's coming from, it's being introduced to them by their oppressors that pay them paychecks every month in their bank account. It's like, yes, build this new DeFi product for me, but I'm just going to pay you every month. You don't have to care about what it is or what it does. Just build it. And therefore, I think there's a lack of education in privacy and security, mainly in like the web space, but also in the whole development ecosystem. Is people take things for granted. They don't audit even their dependencies, and with like JavaScript and the web, you just introduce any library arbitrarily, like, oh yeah, I need some functionality, I will just download this library from the internet, I will never check what it does, but it gives me this nice function that solves my problem, rather than learning it yourself. Why this is happening is like most developers that I see coming into the space now are people who worked in corporate settings, but they get introduced to DeFi. It's like, oh yeah, you can make loads of money and it's going to be fun and stuff. But they just end up doing janitorial work, which is getting bullied by senior developers in the team, and then, oh yeah, you have to do this and that, and I don't care about your ideas even if they're good. It's like, I'm a senior developer and you have to listen to me. And this is what happens in high school as well. You get bullied, and then when you're like 4th grade of high school, you bully the young ones again. And this results in like paradigms of mismanaging data, I think. So the three like most important ones that I mentioned is like proprietary software, closed source code, is people build these products, but no one is able to audit them. So only the maker, only the vendor can fix bugs. But in contrast, when you have open source projects, you also have communities. So communities will audit your code, and they will read it, and they will help you. If they find bugs, they will report it. But in a closed source system, when people find bugs, they will exploit them and steal money from you, which is what happens with DeFi contracts. The second point about hating their job and users is, in a way, when you get introduced to a company and you just start working on things, you don't see the bigger picture. It's like you have Scrum meetings and things, like every 2 days you have meetings instead of doing work, and like video calls and stuff. So you end up just being annoyed, and you're not productive anymore. You just like hate your job. And this, you project this in your code, you project this to your users. So also happens, like there's a little footnote, like pump and dump schemes. That's like all the new DeFi products that you see coming up every week. I feel they're just cash grabs. Centralized services, it's just the PSYOP to enable surveillance, but it's like developers trade their sovereignty for convenience. And they just end up using any unaudited libraries, too many dependencies, many source code, which they don't understand how it works. But big tech exploits this, and they end up selling your data and tracking you and things. Some simple solutions that we can apply immediately is like practicing what we're preaching. We tell people about free software, we tell them why it's important, but we have to do it. So I can tell you things are nice and all, and then I'll go somewhere and work on my MacBook or something. But no, don't do that. If you're preaching, if you're working in crypto and you want to be sovereign and a free individual, you use free software, and you show other people how to use free software. You teach them. About building software, we need to have the choice to opt in. Things have to be private by default, and if someone asks or if someone needs info, we should be able to choose to show it to them. We shouldn't have the paradigm of it being different, where everything is transparent and then we try to pick things we want to hide. It's much easier and much simpler to build software that is completely private, and then we choose what we want to show to people. What Bitcoin still kind of has, and what Monero still kind of has, is communities. So communities are a beautiful thing, and they will help you build your product. They will help you tell the world about it. So try not to, if you're building new products, try not to raise money from VCs. Try to build a community around it, and you will get new members. You'll get people who will work on your projects and help you out. And be modest and be honest. Don't just run towards your personal net worth. Have a good community. When it comes to open source software, try not to use MIT licenses. They just allow you to be exploited by big tech. They will never give back. Use real licenses you can enforce by laws, which are, for example, GPL license. You can go to court. If someone steals your code, you can prove it. And when people have a GPL dependency in their software, that also makes them have to make their own source code open. The thing we're seeing is Solarpunk's belief that everything is fine and everything will be beautiful in the end. So we are just going to give everything and the world is pretty. And by building a transparent system, the Solarpunk says, I have faith that the law won't turn against me. But it could happen. So recently we had Tornado Cash. the government crackdowns, sanctions. So anyone who wanted to be like private on Ethereum and try to like hide a little bit of their behavior on the internet, try to use Tornado Cash and things. So all of a sudden, the government comes in and says, no, we have to stop this. You're laundering money, you're financing terrorism, you're doing this and that. But the small guy who just wanted to have a little bit of darkness and try to not like be an exhibitionist, they also have problems. So what we had happen is Circle, the company who owns like the USDC stablecoin, they just blacklisted all of the Tornado Cash users. So there was like $50 million, which are now invalid. They're not being able to be moved, and no one will accept them as currency anymore. So it's just like tokens that are useless all of a sudden. And many people lost money because of this. We could call it a hydra, so we could say like the solution is to redeploy new smart contracts and just do it all over again. But the problem is it's just a cycle. People will keep coming back. That's the thing is like you cannot just keep running away and hiding in corners. The surveillance that's happening now is that all of these CDNs that I mentioned, most like web-based wallets use them. So they're light clients, so whenever you like open it, it will talk to some server and ask, oh, how much money do I have in my wallet? And this immediately means that you've shared your addresses with some central server. So now they know. Now you know how much money you have, but they also do as well. Also, they have telemetry. So it's like constantly linking your IP address, your location, and things with your like, crypto addresses and wallets. I briefly mentioned that also like all the DeFi apps are mostly hosted by these CDNs. So users are not in ownership of their data. That's like with Tornado Cash, many of these endpoints that you could use to access Tornado Cash were just taken down. And like the normal average guy who doesn't have like enough tech experience, they couldn't access the site anymore because they don't know how to go to IPFS and do all these things. When you want to be anonymous and, for example, use Tor, these CDNs also block you from accessing these pages. So you get a big captcha you need to solve, and in the meantime, while you're trying to access your site, you're also teaching Google's AI how to drive. You select cars and things. And that like forces you towards more inconvenient ways for anonymizing yourself. Like I wanted to have an anonymous Ethereum wallet that's not connected to my previous funds, and I tried to like go download Tor browser and download MetaMask and go to like have a fully anonymous wallet. And then at first, I got stuck on the first step. Is I'm using Tor. I try to access a web app to transfer my funds out of like Tornado Cash or ZK Money, but it's just like, oh yeah, you cannot do this. You're using Tor. So that's like the problem. We need like to explain to more people that you should allow Tor users to use your platforms. And mostly like everything that's on the web, it's tracking you in one way or another. Like somebody thinks like VPNs are enough to do this thing, but it's hardly the truth because it's just like hiding your IP. But your IP is changing all the time. You're like roaming around, and that's the same as just like using a VPN. They track you through cookies and your behavior. Like even if you disable cookies, like Google knows your patterns of searching, and they're basically building AI just to do this. So it's not enough to use like small things. The CDN companies are also like in control of the HTTPS thing that you see in the browser. You think like, oh yeah, it's green and it's secure, but the whole thing is you're just connecting to their servers. Then they are able to decrypt this data, read everything you send to them, and only then do they send it to the actual endpoint. because there needs to be key exchange for communication. And I feel like the devs I'm talking to do not realize this, so I try to teach them. And if you understand the problems of this, please also try to talk to developers and tell them, yeah, I tried to use your platform with Tor, but it's broken. Can we fix it together? It would be good, because we want to avoid this. You will own nothing, and you will be happy. So yeah, let's not live in this world. In the Web3 space, examples of this is some projects. I just found Claros is pushing his proof of humanity and decentralized judges and things like law, Internet of Humans. So you have on-chain identity, you put it somewhere on the transparent blockchain, and then some algorithm decides if you're guilty or not. Yeah, no jury, nothing. Just talk to speech to text, and AI decides, so yeah, this is true or false. And they bait people with UBI, which is basically just an airdrop, but yeah, I'm gonna make some money if I use this platform. I need money, I'm just gonna use it. That's how they get you. WorldCoin is doing something called proof of personhood, which is there's an orb that's this big, and you just put it on a table, and then you're supposed to scan your eye, and then this allows you to access websites and things. And also the same thing what they're doing is yeah, just use it. We will give it to you for free, and if you keep using it, you will be making more money. Also, what I didn't put here, but what happened with Bitcoiners, it happened in El Salvador. They had the Chivo wallet, which is closed source, but they promised everyone, yeah, here's $10 in Bitcoin, just use it. And everyone downloaded it, but I found statistics. They did, what is it called? A survey. They did a survey of how many users continued to use Chivo after getting the $10. It was very low. Just people got the money and ran away. So enter DarkFi is why is it here? It's here because of these problems, and we want to solve them. We want to educate people, and we want to help them to be able to use the internet again. And the technology we're using is, we separate it in 3 parts. One of them is anonymity, anonymous. And for this, we use zero-knowledge proofs and multi-party computation. If you're scared of zero-knowledge proofs as being some magic technology and, oh, it's weird maths, you should go to Ariel Gabizon's talk tomorrow. He will explain that zero-knowledge proofs are not that scary, and it's basically really simple. And you can go with no knowledge about it, and you will learn that it's actually real and it works. So this cryptography allows us to have money and currency, but in a way that it's unlinkable and unlinkable transactions. So if I send money as A to someone who is B, the chain and the people, the users, don't know what happened. They don't know that I sent them this amount or that amount of money. So therefore we get anonymous payments. Yesterday, Rose mentioned DAOs. So we have the anonymous DAOs, which are anonymous organizations resistant to attacks. So I recently started calling them decentralized anonymous organizations. And I think we will just switch to that paradigm. A subset of this DAO thing is actual voting, which, when it's made anonymous, it's unbiased, it's trustless, and it's coercion resistant. So being unbiased means in current transparent voting systems in the crypto space, you see how many votes there are for yes and how many votes there are for no. So if you want to vote and you see, oh yeah, this vote already has 90%, of course I'm going to vote yes, because I'll just go with the rest of the people. But when you don't see it, it's like a psychological shift. It's anything could happen. So I think people voting will be more truthful to their own opinion rather than just looking at the results. Cryptiness is the proof of stake algorithm that we use. It's privacy preserving, so when you're running a node, you're validating the transactions that are coming in, and you're getting rewards by finding blocks. But the point is that it's anonymous in a sense that nobody can see how much money you're staking, and nobody can see how many rewards you're getting. But more importantly, people cannot see who the next leader in the epoch is. So you cannot like DDoS attack them and like throw them down so to slow down the network or to produce an invalid block. And finally, like DeFi, the way it's meant to be in a private sense. So I want to trade money, I want to like maybe gamble on futures markets, but I don't want other people to know about it, or like to avoid copy trading or front running or things like that. So that's the first anonymous part. The second one is being uncensored. So by uncensored, we build peer-to-peer networks. We don't use CDNs to store our apps, and we don't use VPNs to like tunnel our traffic. We use peer-to-peer networks. So one of the technologies we use is like a DHT network where we can store files. So it's it's like, maybe we can call it like a CDN, but it's decentralized. And every user who runs one of these can like help out the network grow. People use GitHub or things like Notion or something to do task management for their projects. We have decentralized task management, and it has all the same options. So, like, eventually someone will actually write an interface that looks just like the platform you used to use, but you won't even know that it's decentralized behind it. And for communication, like most people today just end up using Discord. Like many projects I want to like learn something about or something, they just send me, oh yeah, here's a Discord invite or a Telegram group or things like that. We built a peer-to-peer chat, which also doesn't have this concept of accounts. So you don't need an email or a phone number to register. You just run your own node and you join the network and talk to them. And you can change your nickname at any time you want. You can pretend to be someone else, and you have plausible deniability about anything you write. So that gives you free speech. The more nodes are running, the harder it is to censor. And that's what it is. It's a decentralized network, so we need peers. We need communities to run this software, not just having central servers and companies making money out of it and selling data. And the final point of these is being sovereign. So we're independent from the state. We're independent of corporations on the web. We don't need to use their platforms. We don't need to use their hardware. DarkFi is a layer 1 blockchain. It's, as I mentioned, private by default. It's in contrast to other crypto projects who started transparently, and now they're all having issues with like slapping on privacy projects to try to somehow anonymize all the transparent infrastructure that's below it. So you have people building layer 2s or people just trying to obfuscate some transactions and many things that are happening, but they're not good enough. They're just a means to an end, but not complete. So we have to be private by default, and then we choose to show. We minimize dependencies. So I mentioned like the JavaScript thing is like just downloading millions of packages and dependencies that just give you one function that you could just write yourself. We minimize this and try to like contain it, everything, like keep it as small as possible, but we also keep it modular. So at any point, like where we want to like replace something, it's just like taking one piece out. We don't have to refactor a whole code base, which would take weeks and weeks. We just have modules which can like be plugged in. So even like if you wanted DarkFi to work with proof of work, you could do it very easily. And where I was getting to is this post-web paradigm. Like we should just jump ship from this big browser technology and maybe try to stop using the browser so much and go back to something that was called the desktop, where you used to download the software from the internet and you installed it and it actually worked. So we need to reclaim it and harness its power because it can protect us more. In a browser, you're just getting stuck with some plugins and things, but when you're using the desktop, you have the whole power of your computer. And finally, some notes about the dark. Like, crypto is continuing to split into these two things. On one side, we have more censorship, more surveillance, and it's now being just called regulated finance. It's bolted down, it's unusable. And the other side we're building and jumping on is the underground DarkFi. I think the dark is private, it's resistant, and the dark is empowering. So let there be dark.
Thank you very much. Folks, the mic. Oh, thanks. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions? Oh, yeah.
So where do you see auditability and so transparency of code bases going once it is that we have zero knowledge EVMs and zero knowledge WASM? How are users going to know what it is that they're actually? I mean, the system knows, okay, we're validating what it is, but how's the user, in your viewpoint, going to be, dealing with those additions to the technology?
Yeah. I think that's the thing we need to enforce. We need to make people use free software licenses, and then they should not be allowed to let you use anything proprietary on the blockchain. So I think like when people are writing code, the code should be free and available, and anyone should be able to read it. If you're not like a tech expert, you can ask someone from the community, or you can trust the community rather than just trusting a machine. The community might tell you that things are good and things are valid, and you know what you use. With software, we can build verifications. So if you have some code base, you can reproducibly build it and make sure that it's the thing you're executing.
Let me continue on that point. So I guess one of the things that's frustrated me most about blockchain and Web3 and algorithmic tech is the intention to sort of like, or the belief that we can engineer humans out of the equation, right? Mm-hmm. So would you say that DarkFi is like a return to a human element as opposed to, sort of this like, attempt to solve human problems with technology, and yet humans are still in the mix?
I wouldn't call it a return. I would call that the future is we will be humans who use technology for our power. We will not be owned by these machines. We will own the machines as humans. Right now we're slaves to machines, but this is what we're changing. We're taking back the power that the software. So we use it and not be slaves to it.
So you're saying that CDNs are against privacy and not privacy by default. We have the GDPR in the EU, which says privacy by default has to be enforced. So you're saying all the software using CDNs is not GDPR compliant?
Yeah, it might be. You might be right, yes.
What's the network layer privacy solution for DarkFi? What do you imagine? Because right now,
So
someone, sorry.
Yeah, please continue.
Oh, just right now, the problem is that even in a network like Zcash or Monero, someone can join the network with many nodes and start to learn the correspondence between transactions and IP addresses. And then even if people are using Tor, internet providers can use traffic analysis to find the correspondence between a transaction sent through Tor and the transaction coming out of the Tor network going to another peer-to-peer node. So what's that? And it seems to be a pretty non-trivial problem. What's the solution imagined or planned?
Yeah. Currently, what our network stack does is this thing called pluggable transports. So we're easily able to extend it with any protocol that we need. Currently, in this stage, we just have TLS encryption and Tor. But what we plan to introduce is mixnets. So this is something that helps you. You might have heard of NIM. It's something that we want to really integrate, and it's something that helps to avoid surveillance based on the network layer, not just about your traffic correspondence, but all the thing going to your ISP and further on.
Any more questions, folks? By the way, thank you for mentioning NIM. There will be talk by Harry from the founder of NIM here. So
very good.
You can catch it as well. And if there are not any more questions, thank you so much, Parazyd. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Joining us.